Unbelievable, but true. A young man who once couldn't say a full sentence in English. Just 5 months later, he could confidently speak with foreigners, pass job interviews in English, and began reaching for his dream of a global career. This wasn't magic. It was the real story of Jake, 26 years old, from Brazil. Jake used to be completely blind to English. He couldn't understand what people were saying. He couldn't express what he was thinking. But Jake had a big dream, to work at a top tech company in the United States. Then, one day, the opportunity came, an interview with the very company he admired. But instead of being a launchpad for his career, the interview turned into a nightmare. He didn't understand the questions. He froze, panicked, and said nothing. The room fell into awkward silence, heavy with disappointment. That day, Jake walked out of the building with heavy steps. But strangely, he didn't give up. That failure didn't kill his dream, it woke him up. Jake realized English isn't optional. It's the key. It's essential if I want to break out of my limits. And from that very moment, Jake began his life-changing 5-month journey. Desperate, but not defeated. That was the moment Jake made a bold decision that would completely change the course of his life. After the shocking failure of his job interview, most people would have expected Jake to do the usual. Sign up for an expensive English course, lured in by shiny ads, fancy syllabuses, and native-speaking teachers. But no, Jake had already tried that. He had spent thousands of dollars at big language centers, sat through hours of boring grammar lectures, memorized endless vocabulary lists, listened to dry audio recordings, and still, when it mattered most, he couldn't form a single proper sentence. This time, he knew. If he didn't change the way he learned, he would remain stuck forever. So he sat down and asked himself one powerful question. How can someone with no money, no natural talent, and no English-speaking environment still learn fast and speak fluently? No one showed him the way. No teacher guided him. But Jake had one thing, unshakable determination. He started researching, not grammar, but real-life stories. People who had once been terrible at English but had made it. He watched videos, read blogs, studied their methods, tested everything. And slowly, a practical system for learning English began to take shape. Jake eliminated everything that didn't work, memorizing random vocabulary, textbook-style grammar, dry audio lessons. Instead, he built his new method around 3 key elements. First, he listened to real content, not scripted lessons. Podcasts, videos, short films with subtitles. He didn't try to understand every word. He just listened and repeated, mimicking the tone and rhythm, letting his ears adapt naturally. Second, he spoke from day one. He didn't wait to be good at grammar. Jake talked to himself daily, in front of the mirror, recording his voice, correcting pronunciation. He talked about everyday things, what he did, how he felt, what he wanted. Finally, he built a solid daily routine. No matter how tired or busy, Jake dedicated at least 90 minutes a day to English. No excuses, no waiting for motivation. He disciplined himself like a warrior training for battle. Week by week, he started to feel the difference. His ears caught more. His mouth moved smoother. And the first time he spoke a full sentence in English fluently was unforgettable. I can really speak now. I can actually speak English. No expensive courses, no private tutors, just a system that worked, and the fire of someone who refused to give up. Jake's first 15 days on his journey didn't start with the usual methods of memorizing lists of new words or diving deep into complex grammar rules. Instead, He chose a radically different approach. He didn't want to overwhelm himself with things he couldn't use yet. He realized that the key wasn't to cram more information into his mind, but to master the basics that he already had. The problem wasn't the lack of knowledge. It was that he didn't know how to use the little he already knew in real-life situations. So, Jake began by focusing on the phrases he already knew, no matter how simple. Rather than starting with long vocabulary lists or complicated grammar exercises, he created a list of 50 essential survival phrases. These were the things you would say in daily life. The phrases that everyone should know in any language. These were the words that would help him navigate basic conversations, and he practiced them daily, one by one. Every morning, Jake would stand in front of his mirror and read each of the 50 phrases aloud. This wasn't just a passive exercise. He focused on his pronunciation, tried to get the right intonation, and made sure to exaggerate the stress of certain words. By practicing aloud, he built confidence in his voice and started to develop an ear for how English sounded. It became a routine, something he did with purpose every single day. But Jake didn't just practice by reading in front of a mirror. He took every opportunity to speak to himself throughout the day. While cooking dinner, he would narrate the steps out loud in English. I'm chopping the vegetables. I'm heating the pan. While showering, he would recount his day. Today, I met with a friend at the park. It didn't matter if no one else was around. He was speaking English as much as he could, finding those small moments to practice. What he discovered was that every time he spoke English, even in the most mundane situations, it felt less foreign and more natural. Jake didn't stop there. He knew that immersion was key to mastering any language, so every day he chose 5 sentences from a movie, podcast, or TV show he loved. But it wasn't just about picking random sentences. He listened closely to how native speakers said them. He paid attention to the rhythm, the tone, the pauses, and the way they stressed certain words. Then he would repeat each sentence with the same passion, the same emphasis, trying to match their flow and style. This wasn't about memorizing phrases to repeat like a robot. It was about capturing the essence of how native speakers communicated. These first 15 days weren't about being perfect. They were about building a solid foundation and, more importantly, overcoming fear. Jake wasn't trying to speak perfectly. He was simply learning to speak at all. At the end of 2 weeks, Jake didn't suddenly become fluent in English. But something profound had happened. He had stopped being afraid of speaking English. Every sentence, every word, every phrase had become a small victory. And that shift in mindset, the transition from fear to action, was the first big step on his path to success. Practice phase. Real speaking practice. After establishing a solid foundation, Jake entered the most important phase of his English learning journey, practicing speaking. This was the stage where he realized that simply learning vocabulary and grammar wasn't enough. What he needed to do was practice speaking, and speaking to improve his communication skills in a natural and fluent way. Jake started applying the question-answer method, a simple yet highly effective technique. Every day, he created simple questions for himself and then answered them, gradually expanding the length of his answers. At first, his answers were just a few words, but over time, Jake expanded his responses, going from short phrases to more complex, meaningful sentences. This helped him develop quick reflexes and feel more confident when communicating in English. In addition, Jake used a very interesting and powerful method called echo technique. Whenever he heard a native speaker say something in a movie, podcast, or real-life conversation, he would pause and repeat exactly what was said, not only mimicking the sentence, but also matching the speed, tone, and emotion. It felt as though he was speaking just like the native speaker, allowing him to grasp the rhythm and melody of the language, making English feel easier and more natural than ever before. Furthermore, Jake used the story method to learn vocabulary. Every day, he would select 5 new words and create a short story using them. He would read the story out loud and then incorporate it into real-life situations. By doing this, Jake not only memorized the vocabulary, but also understood the context and how to use the words in everyday life. The act of applying the vocabulary into stories helped him remember the words longer and use them more easily when needed. Continuous speaking practice helped Jake feel more confident in using English. In the beginning, it was challenging, but as time went on, speaking English became easier and more natural for him. Thanks to his perseverance and relentless effort, Jake expanded his communication abilities and began to feel as if English was an indispensable part of his life. Thinking in English, eliminating the need for translation. As Jake continued his journey, he reached a pivotal point, thinking directly in English. This was the game changer he had been waiting for. Until now, he had relied on translating from his native language into English, which slowed him down and limited his fluency. But in order to truly master the language, Jake needed to think in English without any mental translation. He started by describing everything around him in English. Whether he was at home, on the street, or in a cafe, Jake would try to think about his surroundings and describe them in his mind using English words. This practice helped him reinforce vocabulary and phrases, making the language feel more familiar and natural. Instead of translating words from his native language, he began to associate them directly with the objects or actions around him. Another crucial habit Jake developed was asking himself questions and answering them in English. For example, if he was trying to figure out what to eat for dinner, he would ask, "What should I have for dinner tonight?" And answer in English, "I should make pasta." This process encouraged him to think in English, making his inner dialogue flow more easily and seamlessly in the language. Additionally, Jake began writing a daily journal in English. Every evening, he would write down his thoughts, feelings, and events of the day. Writing in English not only helped him practice the language, but it also allowed him to articulate his emotions and reflections in English, further integrating the language into his daily life. By consistently practicing these techniques, Jake's ability to think in English improved significantly. He no longer had to pause and mentally translate sentences in his head. English became a part of his natural thought process, and that's when he truly began to feel like a fluent speaker. Discipline principles, never giving up. Jake had learned a vital lesson on his journey. Discipline was the key to success. It wasn't just about learning new words or practicing grammar. It was about forming a commitment and sticking to it every single day. Jake set a personal rule for himself. He must speak at least 2 hours of English every day, no matter the circumstances. Even when there was no one to converse with, he would find a way to speak. This rule pushed him to get creative and committed to his learning, even when it felt tough or unnecessary. He integrated his English practice into his daily life, Whether he was cleaning the house, walking down the street, or cooking dinner, Jake would talk to himself in English. For example, while cooking, he would narrate the steps. "Now I'm chopping the onions," or "The soup is boiling. I need to stir it." These small practices made it easier to stay immersed in English and provided constant opportunities to reinforce what he had learned. No matter how tired or busy he was, Jake made sure to stick to his rule. The discipline he developed wasn't about perfection. It was about consistency. There were days when he felt frustrated, or when his progress seemed slower than he wanted. But Jake pushed through because he knew that success comes from persistence, not from giving up. By incorporating English into every corner of his day, he began to see real improvement, and that sense of progress fueled his determination to keep going. The more he practiced, the more confident he became, and the closer he got to mastering the language. The final breakthrough: understanding grammar in real life. Jake reached a crucial turning point in his English learning journey. He realized that communication in English was very different from what he had learned in school. The grammar rules, while important, were often taught in isolation, without showing how they functioned in real-life conversations. He knew that to truly master English, he needed to see how native speakers used grammar in context, not just in theory. Jake began to observe how people actually spoke, focusing on how they used tenses, sentence structures, and expressions in everyday situations. He watched videos, listened to podcasts, and interacted with native speakers to study the flow of natural conversation. He paid attention to the way grammar changed depending on the context and how speakers used different tenses to convey nuances of time, emotion, and intention. Rather than memorizing grammar rules by rote, Jake started practicing how to apply them in real conversations. He learned how to use the present perfect to describe life experiences, how to structure conditional sentences when discussing hypothetical situations, and how to vary his tone to reflect different emotions. Through this, he began to understand that grammar wasn't just a set of rigid rules. It was a tool for expressing ideas and connecting with others. This shift in approach was a breakthrough moment. It allowed Jake to understand grammar in a more fluid, dynamic way, one that was connected to real-life usage. Instead of being intimidated by complex sentence structures, he saw them as opportunities to express himself more clearly and authentically. With this new understanding, Jake's speaking skills flourished, and he became more confident in his ability to communicate effectively in English. Lessons from Jake's English learning journey. The power of perseverance and discipline. Jake's story is not just about learning English. It is a journey of perseverance, determination, and the right mindset toward change. When we look at the entire process of his English learning, there are many valuable lessons to be learned, not only for language acquisition, but also for facing challenges and achieving goals. It's never too late to start. Jake was a 26-year-old Brazilian who knew nothing about English when he started his journey. He had a dream of working at a large tech company in the United States. However, when he got an interview opportunity, he failed because he couldn't respond to a single question in English. This was a major shock for Jake, but also a turning point in his English learning journey. He realized that English wasn't just a language. It was the key to his future opportunities. He understood that if he didn't change, he would miss out on great opportunities, and that realization became the driving force behind his determination to change. The first lesson we can learn from Jake is that it's never too late to start. No matter who you are or where you are, if you have a goal and determination, you can achieve what you want. Jake's story proves that when you are ready to change, you can start from anywhere and accomplish great things. Perseverance and self-learning are key. Instead of opting for expensive language courses, Jake decided to find a practical learning system that would help him learn quickly and effectively. He began to build a learning system based on practical methods that he believed would accelerate his progress. Rather than relying on traditional classes, Jake taught himself through videos, podcasts, books, and conversations with native speakers. He was determined to figure out the most effective way to learn English that suited him, not just through theory, but through real-world application. The important lesson from Jake is perseverance and self-learning. You don't need to invest in expensive courses or search for miraculous methods. What matters is that you are persistent and proactive in your learning. Find a learning method that suits you. Keep improving and be patient with the process. English is a global language, but how you learn it is the only thing you can control. Learn vocabulary through real-life situations, not theory. One of the major changes in Jake's learning method was that he didn't focus on learning new words in the traditional way. Instead, he concentrated on using the words he already knew in practical situations. He started building a list of survival sentences that he could use in daily life. He didn't just study vocabulary. He learned how to apply it in communication. Every day, he practiced with simple sentences and gradually expanded the complexity of his responses. Jake's story shows us that learning vocabulary through real-life situations is the most effective way. Instead of just memorizing words from textbooks, you should find ways to use them in everyday situations. Try describing the things around you, or ask and answer questions in English. When you apply language to real-world contexts, you will remember it better and use it more naturally. Learn grammar through real-world contexts. Jake also had an important breakthrough when it came to learning grammar. He realized that grammar for communication is different from what he learned in textbooks. Instead of just memorizing rules and doing exercises, he started paying attention to how native speakers actually use grammar. He began learning how to use tenses and sentence structures naturally in conversations, rather than just memorizing grammatical rules. The lesson here is that grammar only truly makes sense when you use it in real communication. Learn to apply grammar flexibly and naturally in specific contexts. This will not only help you communicate effectively, but also give you a deeper understanding of the language. Think in English. Eliminate translation. One of the biggest challenges when learning English is learning to think in English rather than translating from your native language. Jake gradually trained himself to think in English by describing everything around him in English, asking questions and answering them in English, and even writing a daily journal in English. Through this practice, he began to eliminate the habit of translating and started thinking directly in English. The lesson from Jake here is, learn to think in English. Don't let translation be a barrier that wastes your time and lowers your communication ability. Develop the habit of thinking in English, even for the simplest things. When you think in English, you'll feel more natural and confident in your communication. Discipline. Never give up. Finally, one of the deciding factors that helped Jake succeed was discipline. Jake set strict personal rules for himself, such as speaking English for at least 2 hours every day, even if there was no one to talk to. He combined learning with everyday activities like walking, cooking, and doing house chores to maximize his time. This discipline and persistence helped him stay motivated and gradually improve his skills. The most important lesson here is discipline. There is no shortcut to success. You have to set goals for yourself and be disciplined enough to achieve them. Don't let difficulties or fatigue discourage you. If you stay persistent and maintain your discipline, the results will come. Conclusion. Jake's story is a vivid proof that perseverance, discipline, and the right mindset can help you overcome any challenge. If you are learning English, remember that this journey is not easy, but with determination and the right learning methods, you can succeed. Start today and don't let anything hold you back.